Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. If you're paying attention, you know that you only make money when you work. It might be great money, but it's dependent on you. The information on this podcast will help you solve that. We interview experts and provide analysis into financial freedom through commercial real estate. Why? To help physicians like you thrive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Surgeon Syndicate. This is your host, Dr. Michael McManus, and today we are going to talk a little bit about estate planning. Now, more of what I'm going to talk about today is what can go wrong if you don't do estate planning and why it's important. I am not an estate planning expert. I'm not an estate planning lawyer. We've done our estate planning and it's pretty good. It could probably be better. I hear a lot of talk in circles of successful entrepreneurs about legacy building. This is a personal discussion, not really what we're going to talk about, but people talk about what they're going to leave to their kids. And I've always had a hard time with this one because I grew up in a working class family. When I went away to college, the time I spent working in the ski industry, there were a lot of people who had trust funds and a lot of them were idiots. Just going to throw that out there that they had no responsibility, but they didn't have to because they had fallback money. And they didn't really have to be responsible for themselves. And I don't know if that legacy somebody left them did them any good as a human being. Was I jealous? Yes, absolutely, man. If I had enough money coming from a trust fund to pay my rent and buy groceries, even if it was minuscule, I probably never would have gone to medical school and would have just stayed a ski instructor. But is that what I want for my kids? I want them to find their own way in life and have a life that when they look back on it, it was pretty cool and they accomplished amazing things and things that they consider amazing. And so I don't plan on leaving them a pile of money. And that's not what my estate planning is about. I had a conversation with my senior partners a while back when he was retiring and he talked about, he goes, I want a plan that when I die, my kids don't have to do anything. There's nothing to fight about. There's nothing to worry about. His kids love him, so they can grieve him without worrying about any of the other things. So he was talking about setting up his estate that basically, everything's probably in a trust, but it's all set up with the people in place, the professionals in place, and everything in place that everything will automatically go to sale. The kids don't have to do anything. It will be liquidated and they will receive a check, or they will receive access to it through the trust or however that works. The funeral's planned, the music is planned, what he's going to wear is planned, so they don't have to do anything. That's my goal. That's my gift to them, is that they don't have to do anything. And so what happens if you don't do this? And that's really what this show is about, because I've seen a lot of this lately, the carnage that happens. We like to think things will work out perfectly. So when my dad just had one brother, and when his mom died, his last parent, and she didn't leave a bunch of money behind, they were working class. He and his brother got together at their house. They kind of went through the stuff, like my mom's car was old, and his brother was like, hey, your wife needs a car. Why don't you take mom's car? Oh, yeah, we do need a car. Okay, thanks. We'll take the car. And they basically just went through like, do you need this? Hey, do you need that? And then everything else, they called the Salvation Army, who came and cleaned out the house, and they sold it. They put some furniture in a storage unit for a while and told all the grandkids, if you need some furniture, come and get it. This will be here for a little while, and then we're going to get rid of it. And everything worked out perfectly because the two of them didn't fight over it. Now, the dynamics were pretty simple because there were just two of them. So that helped. And we like to believe that that's the way our kids will be. Sometimes we think it will, and sometimes you may know they're not going to go through it that smoothly. On my mom's side, when her mom died, they had 4 kids, and I had never seen any of my mom and her siblings really have anything more than disagreements about Christmas dinner. They got along well, but after my grandma died, all of a sudden, one of the sisters got really worried about money and somebody getting much and too much, and she wanted to maximize the amount of money she got. They were probably in a tougher situation financially. So even stuff like there were gifts my brothers had given grandma, and some of them from times they'd spent overseas in the military, were some cool things they picked up in Russia or in Germany. And they kind of wanted that back because they'd seen it at grandma's house. It was a memory. They're like, I'd like to have that to remember grandma by. And because one of the aunts was like, nope, I think that's worth something. And, I'm not an expert in probate law, but I think basically if everybody doesn't agree, everything goes to probate. And so they weren't allowed to take those gifts back. And these were things that the value was under $100. And everything had to go to auction. So now my brother goes to the auction to bid on a present that he gave my grandma so he can have it back as a memory. So that because my aunt wants to get the money from the inheritance, and after you paid 20% to the auctioneer or whatever it was, and you split up so he bought this thing in Russia for probably $10 because, the exchange rate, and it was years earlier, and then he had to buy it at auction and ended up paying $50 for it. But by the time the auctioneer took 10, and then that money got divvied up between all the siblings, she got $10 out of it. It's just kind of an example. It created a rift, and a rift that never really went away. It smoothed out before my mom's death, but it created a rift in the family that lasted for forever. And we can talk about some other stories. So the point of these stories is things to think about, that as you do your estate planning, part of what to me, estate planning is preventing your kids from fighting. Don't set things up so that these things don't happen, that there's nothing to fight about. It's a rock solid plan, and that everybody knows what they're going to get. So when my parents passed, and they passed relatively closely to each other, one sister is an attorney and one who's an accountant, and they were working on getting it all put into a trust and getting everything done. But, Dad drug his feet, and that's the way Dad always was. And, they finally had all the paperwork done, and Dad actually died while they were trying to get a hold of him to get him to sign the paperwork. So it still wasn't done. So we didn't fight over anything, but it just left a mess, a bunch of stuff that had to be cleaned up, that had to, luckily my sister took it on and as the attorney and the accountant, and they, where all these bank accounts were and where the money was and how to deal with the probate thing and the paperwork. So at least we had people in amongst us who knew how to do it, and none of us were fighting over it. And that's part of the advantage of having 6 kids. I mean, they weren't wealthy people, but with the farm that was left, I don't know. There was, there was some money there, but not enough to change our lives. And everybody knew that. But so there was nothing really to fight over. We could have, but it was a mess from the standpoint of dealing with the administrative hassles and dealing with it while you're mourning the loss of your loved one, the loss of your parents. And if this was all done ahead of time, it would have been so much nicer to not have to fight that fight. I'm just telling these stories because maybe it'll ring a bell, and it'll motivate you to set your things up as a gift. As I said, you gift to your kids, that you leave them with no heartache and nothing to fight over, nothing to figure out while they're mourning. The one thing that was left is my sister still, because she was moving out there to help Dad at the time that Dad died. She's just stayed and lived in their house and takes care of it was a small farm, and takes care of the farm, and it's all, it's fine. But because the farm's still there, there is another extended family member who is kind of a deadbeat. And he's got a job, I think now, but has never paid rent in his life and kind of feels entitled to live there. And so there's a little bit of a rift over this person and him living there. And that's created some friction amongst the siblings, So when I look at my stuff, I'm like, I don't want anything for anybody to fight over. And I go back to my ex-partner who had his stuff set up that everything was going to be sold. There's no stuff. You got a family farm. This wasn't a family farm. My parents bought it when I was in high school. So it just leaves nothing to fight over again. And again, something left over from them that has created a rift amongst us. And it's not even one of us who's created the rift. It's another family member. And so these are the crazy things you may not even think of. An even crazier one that somebody I know who right now had a sibling die from cancer. And amongst the family, there's no concern, but then there's an ex-spouse of the person who passed, who now they've become the problem because they feel entitled. This is the ex-spouse, not even married anymore, but they feel entitled to some of the money that they thought that the person who passed was going to get as an inheritance, and have created this whole situation about the parents' money who are still alive, and created conflict within the family. And so again, I guess this has been something I've been dealing with, and why it was on the top of my mind. I wanted to think about it, and I wanted to talk about it because at the same time, I hear a lot of things right now in some of the groups I'm in about legacy planning and creating this, something to pass on to your kids. And like I said in the beginning, it's not something that I feel so necessary about. I want my kids to build their own life. But when you think about this, and I know a lot of successful people who have done minimal to no estate planning, they might have a will. I know doctors who don't have a will, much less a trust, much less a detailed estate plan. Like I said, all the way to the extreme of, somebody who's already planned out their funerals and nobody has to do any of it. They've got a burial plot that's taken care of. They've already got plans set with an administrator to liquidate their assets and how that will be divvied out. So they've set it up so there's nothing for their kids to do and nothing for them to fight over. And what they really did is they looked at it and said, how can I set up my passing to create the least chance of conflict or problem amongst my kids absolutely possible? And that's going to be my gift to them, so that in my dying, I don't create strife in their life. And so anybody who's listening to the show is a real estate show. If you've got money to invest in real estate, you likely have assets and you have stuff to pass on. So again, I'm not an estate planning expert, but I recommend you find one. Find an estate lawyer and an accountant who does estate planning, and build a plan and think through all of these scenarios and all the crazy stories you've heard, and build a plan that prevents those. And that's your gift to your children, is that they don't get sucked into some chaos that nobody ever could have dreamed of, because everything's all set and there's nothing there to fight over. So that's my thoughts for today. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions about this, you want to talk, or just wondering how to go through this, because I think some people, they get tied up and just feeling nervous because they don't know about this stuff. Or if you want to talk about real estate and investing in wonderful things like strip malls and warehouses, book a call. Let's talk. See if we can help you make a plan to make your future amazing. And even after you pass, keeps it from creating conflict for your kids, and build a plan for yourself. It's time to take action. Don't be stuck. If you want to talk, you can go to surgeonsyndicate.com, schedule a call. I would love to talk to you, and hope to see you again here next time on Surgeon Syndicate. This has been an episode of Surgeon Syndicate. If you got value from this episode, other surgeons are hungry to become job optional, and you can help them by sharing this content today. Schedule a call and we can make a plan. Looking forward to having you with me on the next episode.